The alarm hit me before the lights did, a screech of metal, a shudder under my boots, and then darkness swallowed the corridor whole. I grabbed the wall to keep from falling, my heart slamming against my ribs, and somewhere above me, I heard the groan of a ship trying to hold itself together. My name is Daniel Ashford, and 3 minutes ago I was just a maintenance engineer trying to fix a coolant line on Deck 7 of the Velar Ascension, a massive alien vessel that humanity had been allowed to dock with under a fragile treaty. Now I was trapped in a service shaft with no light, no radio signal, and no idea which direction led back to the human section of the ship. The Valorans were not like us. They moved in silence, communicated through a shared mental current that connected every member of their species except the ones assigned to speak with outsiders like me. They called it the weave. I called it unsettling. For 6 months I had worked among them, fixing what they could not fix themselves, because for all their strange biology and their strange silence, they still needed hands that could turn a wrench in tight spaces. Human hands. My hands. I pressed my palm against the wall panel, searching for a manual release, and felt the metal grow warm under my fingers. Something was wrong. The ship's power grid had failed in a section that should never lose power, not according to any schematic I had studied. I pulled a small flashlight from my belt and clicked it on, casting a thin beam down a corridor that curved in a direction I did not recognize. Behind me, the shaft I had come from was already sealing itself shut with a heavy mechanical hiss. Ahead of me was unknown territory. I should have waited. I should have called for help and stayed exactly where I was until someone came to pull me out. That is what the treaty manual told every human contractor to do in an emergency. But the manual also said the air filtration on this deck would fail within 20 minutes if the backup systems did not engage, and I could already feel the air growing thin and metallic in my throat. So I moved forward. The corridor sloped downward, then split into 3 paths. I chose the one where the air felt least stale, hoping it meant fresher circulation, hoping it meant a way out. My flashlight beam bounced across walls covered in a strange organic texture, ridges and grooves that pulsed faintly, almost like they were breathing. I had never seen this part of the ship before. I was not supposed to see this part of the ship, ever. A door stood at the end of the corridor, taller than any door I had encountered on any deck, wide enough for 3 of me to walk through side by side. There was no keypad, no scanner, nothing that resembled the security measures I had grown used to. Just a smooth surface that looked like it had been grown rather than built. I pressed my hand against it out of instinct, and it slid open without resistance. Warm air rushed out to meet me, carrying a scent I could not place, something like rain on warm stone. I stepped through, telling myself I would just look for a moment, just enough to see if this led somewhere useful, and then I would turn back. The chamber on the other side stole the breath right out of my lungs. It was enormous, easily the size of a stadium back home, with a ceiling so high it disappeared into shadow. Pale light glowed from veins running through the walls, pulsing slowly like a heartbeat. In the center of that vast space stood a raised platform, and on it, something waited. I froze. It was not what I expected. I had heard whispers among the other engineers, rumors passed in hushed voices during meal breaks, that the Velaron Queen was a myth kept alive to explain why certain sections of the ship were forbidden. No human had ever seen her. No human was supposed to know she existed at all. But she was real, and she was massive, and she was looking directly at me. Her body rose nearly 4 meters into the air, covered in shifting plates of deep violet and black that caught the pale light like polished stone. 6 limbs extended gracefully from her core, 2 of them folded like arms, the others braced against the platform for support. Her head, if I could call it that, was crowned with structures that curved backward like a headdress made of bone, and her eyes, dozens of them arranged in clusters along her face, all turned toward me at once. I should have run. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to turn and sprint back through that door before it sealed shut forever. But my legs would not move, and somewhere beneath the fear, a strange stillness settled over me, because she was not attacking. She was not calling for guards. She was simply watching, patient, as though she had been expecting company. A voice entered my mind, not through my ears, but somewhere deeper, calm and layered, like many voices speaking in harmony. You found your way here faster than I calculated. I stumbled back a step, my hand instinctively reaching for the small multi-tool clipped to my belt, useless as it was against something her size. My throat felt dry when I finally managed to speak. I did not mean to come here. There was a malfunction. I was just trying to find a way back to the human section. Her clusters of eyes narrowed slightly, an expression I could not fully read, but somehow understood as amusement. There was no malfunction, Daniel Ashford. Hearing my name in that layered voice sent a cold shock through me. I had never given my name to anyone outside the engineering crew, and certainly never to whatever guarded this chamber. How do you know my name? I know the names of every human who has walked these decks. I have listened to your kind since the day your first ship made contact with mine. The weave carries more than thought between my people. It carries what they observe, what they hear, what they feel when they stand near one of you. I forced myself to breathe slowly, trying to steady the hammering in my chest. If she wanted me dead, I told myself, I would already be dead. She had not moved from her platform, had not summoned anyone, had not so much as flexed one of those powerful limbs toward me. Whatever this was, it was not an ambush. Why did the door open for me? I asked. Every other door on this ship needs authorization. I do not have clearance for this section. I should not even know it exists. The corridors reshaped themselves at my command, she said. The malfunction you believe you experienced was a path I created, deck by deck, section by section, guiding you here without your knowledge. I wanted to see what a human would do when placed in the position you now stand in. A test, I said. You have been testing me this whole time. Not merely you. Your species. For 6 months I have watched my subjects report on your kind, engineer, soldier, translator, every human who sets foot on this vessel. They describe behavior that defies the patterns my mind expects. You do not calculate risk the way we do. You do not retreat when logic suggests retreat. You continue forward, even when continuing forward serves no clear purpose. I thought of every drill I had run through during training, every scenario where instructors told us that alien species valued caution above all else, that we needed to prove ourselves calm and predictable to be trusted. Standing in front of this creature, hearing her describe humanity as something unpredictable, felt like hearing a stranger describe a person I thought I knew. We are not reckless, I said, though even as the words left my mouth I was not entirely certain I believed them. I did not say reckless, she replied. I said unpredictable. There is a difference, though many of my kind struggle to separate the two. My people share one mind across billions of individuals. When one of us calculates a probability, all of us know that probability instantly. We move as a single organism, coordinated, efficient, safe. Your species does not share this gift. Each of you calculates alone, and yet somehow, you still manage to move together when it matters most. I thought about the crew back home on the outpost, the way soldiers and engineers and scientists from a dozen different countries had learned to trust each other in the months since first contact, despite speaking different languages, despite carrying different histories, despite none of them sharing a single thought between them. We learn to trust each other, I said slowly. It is not automatic. It is a choice we make every day. A choice, she repeated, and something in her tone shifted, grew quieter, more thoughtful. My people have never needed to choose trust. It is given to us at birth through the weave. We have never known what it means to build something so fragile through effort alone. The chamber fell silent, except for the soft pulse of light along the walls. I realized my fear had begun to fade, replaced by something closer to fascination. This creature, this queen who commanded an entire species through a shared consciousness beyond anything human science understood, seemed almost envious of something as simple as friendship, built through choice. Why does that matter to you? I asked. Why does it matter what one engineer does when he gets lost in a corridor? Because you are not the first, she said. 11 others before you found paths that led them close to this chamber, though none reached the door itself. A soldier who chased a signal she believed was a distress call, though there was no distress call, only a fragment of the weave I allowed to leak into her equipment. A scientist who ignored 3 separate warnings because his instruments showed an anomaly worth investigating. Each of them behaved in ways that confounded my calculations, and each time, the weave grew a little louder, with questions about what your species truly is. I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature of the chamber. 11 others. I was not special. I was simply the 12th experiment in a series I never knew existed. What happens to them? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. The others who found you. They returned to their lives, unharmed, unaware of how close they came. You are the first to actually stand before me, the first the door recognized as worthy of entry. Worthy, I repeated. Worthy of what? Of an answer, she said, and for the first time since I had entered the chamber, she moved. One of her forelimbs lifted from the platform and gestured toward the walls around us, where the pulsing veins of light seemed to brighten in response. My kind fears what we cannot predict, Daniel Ashford. For generations, this fear kept us safe. We calculated every threat, avoided every unnecessary risk, expanded across the stars slowly and carefully, because the weave demanded certainty before action. Then your species arrived, and certainty became impossible. I thought about the first contact reports I had read as a teenager, grainy footage of a Velaran scout ship hovering silently above a human research station for 3 days before finally opening communication, as though they had been calculating every possible outcome before daring to speak. You were afraid of us, I said. We remain afraid of you, she corrected. Fear does not disappear simply because understanding grows, but fear can transform. When my scouts first reported human behavior, the weave debated for months whether your species posed an existential threat, because we could not model your decisions. A being that acts without complete certainty, that chooses courage over caution, appeared to us as either extraordinarily brave or extraordinarily foolish. We could not determine which. Maybe it is both, I said, surprising myself with how easily the words came. Maybe that is what makes us who we are. Her eyes shifted, all of them focusing on me with an intensity that made my skin prickle, though the fear I felt now was different from before, quieter, almost respectful. Explain, she said. I thought for a moment, searching for words that could capture something I had never needed to explain before, because back home, nobody ever asked why humans did what they did. It was simply understood. We do not always know if something will work, I said. We do not always have every answer before we act, but we have learned that waiting for certainty can cost more than acting without it. Sometimes the door only opens if you are willing to walk through it, not knowing what waits on the other side. Like you did tonight, she said. I looked around the vast chamber, at the pulsing walls and the towering figure before me, and realized that despite every instinct screaming at me to run, I had kept walking forward through corridors that should not have existed, toward a door that should not have opened, into a room no human had ever entered and lived to describe. Like I did tonight, I agreed. The chamber grew quiet again, and I became aware of how small I truly was inside that space. A single human, standing before a being who commanded the thoughts of billions. Yet somehow, in that silence, I did not feel small. I felt seen, in a way I had never quite felt before, not by my commanders, not by my colleagues, not even by the treaty officials who signed the documents that let me stand on this ship in the first place. You have given the weave much to consider, she said finally. For the first time in generations, my people debate not whether your species is dangerous, but whether danger and value can exist within the same being simultaneously. This is a question we have never needed to ask before. What happens now? I asked. Do I go back and pretend none of this happened? You may tell your commanders what you wish, she said. I do not require your silence. Secrets kept through force rarely remain secrets, and I have grown weary of hiding behind closed doors. Perhaps it is time my people learned to trust the way yours does, through choice, not through certainty. I felt something shift in the air around us, a subtle change in the pulse of light along the walls, as though the entire ship itself had exhaled after holding its breath for a very long time. Will I see you again? I asked, unsure why the question mattered to me as much as it suddenly did. Perhaps, she said. The weave will decide, and I am part of the weave, though I am also something more. That contradiction is new to me. I find I do not entirely dislike it. The great door behind me began to open on its own, warm light from the corridor spilling into the chamber. I understood without being told that this was my moment to leave, that the audience I had been granted was drawing to its close. Before I turned to go, I looked back at her one last time, this towering creature who ruled over billions, yet stood alone on her platform in a chamber built for silence and secrecy. "Thank you for not hurting me," I said, because it felt like the only thing worth saying. "I was never going to hurt you, Daniel Ashford," she replied. "I only wanted to understand you. And now, I believe I understand a little more than I did before you walked through my door." I stepped back into the corridor, and the great door sealed shut behind me with a soft hiss, leaving no trace that it had ever opened at all. The path ahead looked different now, brighter somehow, though I could not tell if that was truly the case, or simply how my eyes registered the world after everything I had just witnessed. I walked for what felt like an hour, though my chronometer told me it had only been 11 minutes, before I found a service hatch leading back to the human section of the ship. When I finally climbed through into familiar territory, lights blazing and voices calling my name over the comm system, I said nothing about where I had been. Not because she asked me to stay silent, but because I was not yet ready to explain something I barely understood myself. That night, lying in my bunk aboard the outpost, I stared at the ceiling and thought about everything she had said, about fear transforming into understanding, about certainty being less important than the courage to act without it. I thought about 11 others who had come close to that chamber before me, each one testing a species that did not yet know it was being tested, each one proving something about humanity that even we had never fully understood about ourselves. I do not know if I will ever stand in that chamber again. I do not know if the Queen of the Velar Ascension will ever speak to another human the way she spoke to me that night. But I know this much is true. Somewhere deep within that ship, connected to billions of minds through a current I could never hope to comprehend, there is a being who once feared everything my species represented, and who now, because one lost engineer refused to stop walking forward, understands us a little better than she did before. And sometimes, when the corridors on Deck 7 grow quiet, and the lights flicker just slightly longer than they should, I wonder if she is still watching, still listening, still waiting to see what humanity will do next. I hope, wherever she is, that we continue to surprise her.